Inventing Reality, Section, Selling the System. Along with products, the corporations sell themselves. By the 1970s, for the first time since the Great Depression, the legitimacy of big business was called into question by large sectors of the public. Enduring inflation, unemployment, and a decline in real wages, the American people became increasingly skeptical about the blessings of the corporate economy. In response, corporations intensified their efforts at the kind of, quote, advocacy advertising, designed to sell the entire capitalist system, rather than just one of its products. The spending on, quote, non-product related advertisements more than doubled, from $230 million to over $474 million, showing a far greater growth rate than advertising expenditures as a whole. Today, 1/3 of all corporate advertising is directed at influencing the public on political and ideological issues, as opposed to pushing consumer goods. That portion is tax-deductible as a, quote, business expense, like all other advertising costs. Led by the oil, chemical, and steel companies, big business fills the airwaves and the print media with celebrations of the, quote, free market and warnings of the baneful effects of government regulation. Mobile Oil, probably the forerunner in this area, ran ad campaigns with an annual budget of $5 million to inform readers that Mobile, quote, gave employment to thousands of persons, contributed to charities, and brought prosperity to local communities. More significantly, as some of the Mobile ads note, business firms all across America do their part to create prosperity for all. One Mobile, quote, observations column in the Washington Post put it this way, beginning of long quote. Business, generally, is a good neighbor, and most communities recognize this fact. From time to time, out of political motivations or for reasons of radical chic, individuals may try to chill the business climate. On such occasions, we try to set the record straight. So when it comes to the business climate, we're glad that most people recognize there's little need to tinker with the American system. End of long quote. A primetime television commercial, shown repeatedly in 1981, offered footage of a skier going down a mountain slope as a deep, male, off-screen voice said, beginning of long quote, freedom. We Americans have the freedom to choose. The freedom to take risks, a skier leaping over a precipitous embankment. The freedom to succeed, the skier makes a skillful maneuver. And the freedom to fail, the skier takes a mild spill into the powdery snow. When government comes into our lives, things change. When people look to government for protection, they get protection, but they lose some of their precious freedom. Skier at the end of the trail, head bowed, moving along slowly, dragging his poles behind him. Just something to think about from the people at Getty. End of long quote. Business as a providential social force was the theme of a full-page ad by Conoco Inc. in the Christian Science Monitor. It read, beginning of long quote, what will capital be doing on Labor Day? Working, building new plants, starting new businesses, funding innovation and growth, developing more energy to fuel the economy. Part of the capital that creates jobs comes from the earnings of American industry. Throughout the economy, stronger earnings can provide the capital to create more and better jobs. So as we celebrate Labor Day, let's not forget capital. It works too. End of long quote. American readers are not likely to be treated to an alternative view. No newspaper would run an advertisement pointing out that capital cannot build an industry, plant, or commodity without labor, and that when labor takes off, nothing is produced. Capital is the surplus value created by labor. Quote, putting one's money to work means mixing it with labor to create more capital. Purely on its own, without labor, capital is incapable of building a woodshed, let alone, quote, new plants. But the message we get is that capital creates, rather than is created. Business is also depicted as society's grand protector. Defense companies spend millions in weeklies like Time and Newsweek, and in the major newspapers to advertise their accomplishments in weaponry, and to assure the reader that America's defenses are growing stronger thanks to the military hardware produced by this or that contractor. The murderous war waged by President Bush against a vastly weaker Iraq in 1991 was proudly hailed by defense corporations as an accomplishment of modern weaponry. In the afterglow of easy victory, Grumman ran a commercial on television in May 1991 that crowed, quote, "A superior defense technology will reduce the risk to American military personnel, and we have that technology," end quote. Other military contractors ran ads thanking Bush for his supposedly superb leadership and the troops for their courage and devotion. The nuclear industry got in on the Gulf War by repeatedly running a TV commercial in the winter and early spring of 1991 with an off-screen voice that said, beginning of long quote, "We rely on over 40% of our oil from overseas sources." Quick shots of the Ayatollah Khomeini, Muammar Gaddafi, Middle East crowds demonstrating angrily, a raised arm waving an AK-47. Which do you prefer? Nuclear energy or relying on unstable sources? An up-close shot of Saddam Hussein. Nuclear energy. You can count on it. End of long quote. Throughout the Cold War, the defense contractors ran ads that contradictorily conveyed both alarmist and reassuring messages, in effect saying, 1. The Soviet military has achieved superiority and is ever more fearsome and threatening, and 2. The United States has the best defense system in the world thanks to the devoted and patriotic efforts of corporate defense contractors. Cold War or no Cold War, what the defense firms sell to the public is an ideology of American globalism. The need to continue spending hundreds of billions of dollars on weaponry in order to maintain a global military machine. The arms merchants invoke the menacing images of demonized foreign adversaries, then promise security through strength, assuring us that we can live safely as long as we don't skimp on military spending. In regard to their own doings, defense contractors present benign facades. Quote, "Where science gets down to business," end quote, says Rockwell, whose business is making the plutonium triggers for atomic warheads. Quote, "We bring good things to life," says General Electric, who made such good things as the neutron generators that activate thermonuclear devices. Quote, "We'll show you a better way," says Honeywell, whose electronic components show nuclear missiles a better way to targets. Quote, "A leading manufacturer of fine products for America and for the free world," end quote, is how General Dynamics, a weapons producer, describes itself. Another area targeted by corporate propaganda is environmentalism. Industry has responded to the surge in ecological consciousness by spending millions of dollars in a campaign designed to convince the public that business has been caring for the environment. At the same time, the big corporations spent next to nothing on actual conservation and pollution controls. Were one to judge strictly from the ads, however, business does everything it can to protect the environment, from industrial effusion and chemical toxins. An ad by Chemical Manufacturers Association shows an attractive woman being hugged by a smiling little girl. The woman is saying, quote, "My job is managing chemical industrial wastes. What I do helps make the environment safer today and for generations to come." End quote. Of the many similar ads that have appeared regularly on television and in various newspapers and news magazines, none alters the truth that private industry has a long and dreadful record of poisoning the environment with toxic waste. While big business spends lavishly to get its propaganda before large audiences, public interest groups, labor unions, and dissident organizations seldom gain access to mass media advertising, mostly for lack of the huge sums needed to buy television time and print space. As of 1991, a full-page, quote, "Cause and Appeal" ad in the weekday Washington Post cost $41,065 for one day, and in the New York Times, $47,124. And both papers charged substantially more for Sunday. On the infrequent occasions when dissident groups muster enough money to buy broadcasting time or newspaper space, they still may be denied access to the media. Liberal-minded commentators have been refused radio shows even when they had sponsors who would pay. Scientists, politicians, celebrities, and political activists who have opposed the arms buildup, the threat of nuclear war, or U.S.-supported military repression in Central America, have been denied time spots and news space for their ads by the major networks and their affiliates, and by major publications. A New York Times executive turned down one Peace ad because he judged it not in the, quote, "best interests of the country." Broadcasters and publishers can run any political commercial they want, no matter how emotionally raw and derogatory. And they can refuse to run any political message for any reason, or no reason at all, regardless of how factually accurate or important it might be. End of section.